Hey YouTube, JoBoy here. So today I want to talk about Boku no Hero Academia. So if you're not caught up with the manga, do not watch this video unless you want to be spoiled. And now that you've had a chance to click off the video if you're not interested in watching it, today we want to talk about, again, the traitor of UA. And so guys, if you've watched my previous video, specifically my previous traitor video, you'll know that I highly suspect Tooru Hagakure, the invisible girl, as being the traitor. That is my #1 prime suspect. That video has been incredibly well received. Keeping in mind, I have a One Piece channel, and that video has more likes than any other video that I have made, which is astounding, and it's gone semi-viral. But if you haven't seen it yet, link for it will be in the description. But I think that I convinced a lot of people that Tooru Hagakure may be the traitor, that at the very least you should be highly suspicious of her. But if you do believe her to be the traitor, I think that it's nearly a guarantee, not quite but pretty close, that there is at least one other traitor. And the reason for this is relatively straightforward, but as you'll know, after the events of the field trip arc, Tooru Hagakure was knocked out by the sleeping gas and was essentially in like a comatose state for several days and missed the arc that followed. And if we're assuming that nothing weird was happening here with Tooru, that she was actually knocked out, the Villain Alliance, and specifically All For One, almost definitely had another source of intel. Guys, 100% I believe that All For One was aware of the plans to specifically attack the Nomu factory. That information, through unknown means, was somehow leaked to him. And so why exactly do I think that? And guys, as blatantly as possible, it seems almost a guarantee that the place in which the Nomus were stored was not the actual Nomu factory, but rather a building that was used to lead people to believe that they had found the Nomu factory. And the reason that I think this is the following. So first off, when the students, Deku and group, found the factory, they noticed something interesting, which is that there were weeds growing underneath the front door. And so why exactly would weeds be growing underneath the front door? It's because that door was never used. It's also important that Kirishima notes that the factory is dirty, as in it's pretty much unused and unkempt. Which is incredibly strange given that it's supposed to be the place where they manufacture Nomus. And then when we actually get a look inside of the factory, Kirishima says, "You gotta be kidding me, it all looks so slapdash." And so for those who don't know, slapdash means done too hurriedly or carelessly. Do you really think the place in which they manufacture Nomus, or even just simply put, store Nomus, is going to look slapdash? And this leads into what the police say at the very end of the arc. Are we sure that storehouse wasn't just a decoy to begin with? Wasn't exactly an environment conducive to live experimentation, not to mention how easy it was to find. All of these details are telling us that this factory was indeed a decoy that was very quickly and hurriedly created. And so why would they exactly quickly create some sort of decoy? And the answer is very, very simple. They expected the attack. Somehow All For One knew that they had placed a tracking device on that particular Nomu, and because of that he created this decoy place with a bunch of other Nomus to make them think that they had found the correct place. And guys, there's even more evidence, not that you needed it. Black Mist, or Kurogiri, basically stated that the Nomus were moved. All For One must have done this without forming the Villain Alliance, because he tried to warp Nomus in and completely failed, saying that they weren't where they were supposed to be. All For One moved them to this abandoned factory. And so then the question must be asked, why did All For One go through all of this trouble? And I think the answer is very, very simple. He knew what the police's plans were, but he didn't want them to know for sure that he knew. He wanted them to think that they had actually found the factory so as to conceal the identity of the one who informed him of their plans. Because straight up guys, the amount of people who knew exactly what the police's plans were are very, very few. And so who exactly could have informed All For One? Well, you have the police itself, you have several heroes, you have the students of class 1A minus Tooru and Jiro, and you have the principal, Nezu. The options to choose from here are incredibly scary. And so let's start off with the students from Class 1A. And so it's important to note there was two distinct plans going on. There was the plan to rescue Bakugo at the Villain Alliance headquarters, and then there was also the plan to destroy the Nomu facility. The students of Class 1A specifically only knew about one of these plans. They were unaware that Bakugo would not be at the facility that they were tracking. And so this is important because we then would have to question, if it is a student from Class 1A that informed All For One as to what the police were going to do, then All For One would have been unaware of specifically the plan to attack the Villain Alliance headquarters. And guys, to be frankly honest here, I'm not certain if he knew it was going to happen or not. Using the quirk that he had recently acquired from Ragdoll, he could keep an eye on Shigaraki, but there's really no evidence which suggests for sure that he knew that the Villain Alliance headquarters was going to be attacked beforehand. Also, with the relationship that's set up between Shigaraki and All For One, it's pretty clear that All For One is not always going to tell him everything. I mean, even in the same situation, he failed to inform them that the Nomus had been moved. So this is pretty much all I have to work with. All For One did not seem in the slightest concerned or surprised at the fact that the Villain Alliance headquarters was attacked and all of the Villain Alliance was essentially defeated, which leads me to believe that he expected the attack, but we just cannot be certain. But if he did expect the attack, then he was informed of both plans, which would mean every one of the students from Class 1A are void of suspicion. But despite the uncertainty, we do know this, which is it's highly implied, I believe, that All For One was not aware that specifically Deku and group were there in order to rescue Bakugo. He does not seem aware that they had come to the factory, and I think if he had been aware of that, if someone had told him, then he would have acted differently. He would have taken them hostage, he would have done something to them, but he essentially ignored them. So I think that if there was a student from Class 1A who informed All For One of the police's plan to infiltrate the Nomu factory, that they did not also tell him that the students from 1A would be there as well. And this is an interesting observation, and I think also puts into further suspect the idea that one of the students from Class 1A is responsible for informing All For One of all of this. If this person is worried for his classmates, but yet accepts the existence of All For One and the threat that he poses on the entire society, these two things don't really add up. And so if the police and heroes attack All For One, and All For One specifically had some sort of spy placed within those organizations, if this spy did not inform All For One of these plans, All For One's wrath would be placed on that spy. And so in that case, you can't get away with not telling All For One. But in this particular case, if the spy is a student, the students aren't necessarily guaranteed to know this information, so they could get away with not telling All For One. Long story short, a person evil enough to inform All For One that somebody was about to capture him despite how just terrible he is, but not evil enough to sacrifice his classmates despite potentially having previous motives to do this, and having really no absolute need to tell All For One in the first place. It just does not seem likely that a student was a traitor in this particular instance. So then, just to bear with me, let's cross off the students from the list of suspects. Who's up next? And we'll look at the heroes. And we got a good picture of all the heroes that were present in the operation who would have known what was going on beforehand. And so most of them, the heroes, have really good alibis. I'm not going to go into every specific alibi, which makes me think that they're not guilty, but I do think that they're there. There's two potential exceptions, right? I have these two heroes circled. One is blocked by the speech bubble, and the other one is not blocked at all. It's kind of in the center of the frame. The one on the right, I believe that we saw at the conclusion of this arc, and we also saw him at various points within the arc, and I don't find him overly suspicious. I honestly believe that this guy is being hidden because he is the number 3 hero in the Japanese hero rankings. I also wonder if he is the father of Inasa, the wind quirk user from Shiketsu High. But anyway, that's my reasoning for why his introduction within this arc was very ambiguous compared to the rest of the heroes. The other guy, who is unnamed, did not appear in the arc whatsoever. Now, the two groups are separated based on where they infiltrated, where their attack priority was. And so you can see on the right-hand side, these people all attacked the Villain Alliance headquarters. The people on the left all attacked the factory. And the fact that this guy was conspicuously absent during the entirety of this whole situation is a huge red flag to me. Straight up, guys, this was the only hero that was pictured in this panel that was not shown during the arc at all. I get some huge traitor vibes from this particular hero. And so, guys, if this happens to be true, that would mean that All For One has infiltrated the Hero Society and placed his own subordinates within their ranks. All of these guys also, it's worth noting, were big names. They were big named heroes, including the guy that is covered by the text bubble and the guy in the center frame here, so they are influential heroes. So of the hero group, this guy is the guy that I would suspect. But just because we narrowed down on him doesn't mean that there isn't another. There's two additional suspects, and let's first look at the police. And so there is only one named character within the police, and I would assume that the traitor would be a named character unless it's just a completely unrevealed character. And so this guy, the only possibility at this point in time that we know of would be Tsukauchi, the friend of All Might. There are some things that are suspicious about him, but not enough, I don't believe, at this point in time to really make an entire video trying to expose him as a traitor. Even within this arc, a lot of his actions seem incredibly reasonable, as though he is sort of baffled by what has occurred, much like everyone else. The only other suspect that we have is the principal of UA, Nezu. Of the teachers within UA, it's said to us specifically that the only one that was debriefed about the plan was the principal, Nezu. Unlike Tsukauchi, I will be making a future video relatively soon that will try and convince you guys that Nezu is indeed a suspect. But we're gonna save it for another time because we're already at 10 minutes. The point of this video, if you watch the entirety of it and it never dawned on you, is that right here we're trying to prove that even if Tooru Hagakure is the traitor, there must be another one. But not only is it possible for this traitor to be within UA, it's possible that this traitor or traitors have infiltrated in multiple groups. And so my takeaway point here is that rather than focusing specifically on who might be the traitor within UA, I think a good and broader question to ask is, where are the traitors potentially within many different organizations? Remember that All For One essentially used to rule Japan, and obviously he's fallen from grace, but that doesn't mean he still doesn't have numerous connections we couldn't even possibly imagine. But anyway, guys, that's all I really want to talk about today. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree and why. Share your thoughts. Like the video if you like the video. Dislike the video if you dislike the video. Subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.